in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. The day my sister Liana died, I brought my nephew to the Marquis's estate to acknowledge our kinship. At that exact moment, the second young master of the estate, Vincent Zhao, was getting married, and the entire residence was bustling with excitement. When the Marchioness, Madame Zhao, saw the jade pendant I presented, she nearly fainted. She hid behind a screen, suppressing her anger and whispering with resentment. If the Prime Minister's daughter were to find out about the scandalous affair he had caused, this marriage would be completely ruined. An old nursemaid beside her immediately offered a plan, whispering, "Madam, do not be hasty. The second young master, Vincent, once said that the girl was given an aphrodisiac, so she certainly couldn't have seen his face clearly. It was only when he left in a hurry that he accidentally dropped the family heirloom jade pendant, giving her leverage. Now that this woman has shown up, why not just blame the first young master, Julian Zhao, for the whole affair? I have had sharp hearing since I was a child, and I heard every single word of their scheme. To be honest, whether it was the first young master or the second young master, it didn't matter to me who became my husband. What mattered was that my nephew, Leo, must have a proper place to study. The Marquis's Estate Academy was overseen by a great contemporary Confucian scholar, and I was certain it would not waste the boy's natural talents. Back to the matter at hand. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, was hot-tempered and feared I would cause a scene, ruining the second young master Vincent's wedding. The first young master, Julian Zhao, had not even returned to the estate, but she hastily registered Leo Lai under the name of her eldest son. She didn't even bother to investigate my identity or age before quickly adding me to the family genealogy, appointing me as the first young master's official wife. Only Mama Zhang, her quiet and taciturn personal servant, seemed somewhat suspicious. She scrutinized me twice, her brow furrowed in doubt. "Are you truly 24 this year?" I was using my sister Liana's household registration. She was exactly 24 when she passed away, while I had just turned 17. I smiled shyly and said, "I was born in the year of the tiger. My youthful skin is merely due to knowing a few secret beauty techniques. If Mama Zhang doesn't mind, I can give you a prescription." Mama Zhang did not warm up to my flattery, merely stating coolly, "You seem to know your etiquette. Now that you are the young mistress of the Marquis's estate, there is no need to be so overly courteous to a servant like me." Afterward, she collected some daily necessities and led my nephew Leo and me to a remote small courtyard within the estate. The moment she pushed open the door, both my nephew and I froze. The courtyard was overgrown with weeds, and cobwebs and dust were everywhere. It was clearly neglected. In truth, I had already inquired about the situation in the Marquis's estate before coming. I heard that the first young master, Julian, was not favored by the Marchioness, Madame Zhao, but I had assumed it was merely a discordant mother-son relationship. I never expected that after he had been away on military campaigns for so many years, his family would be so indifferent as to let his former residence fall into such disrepair. Mama Zhang also seemed surprised by the sight. She opened her mouth, intending to reprimand the servants of the courtyard, but swallowed her words upon looking at me. No matter how scandalous the Marquis's estate was, they couldn't let an outsider like me witness their farce. I smiled and said, "This small courtyard is quiet, and the first young master Julian is a martial artist. Isn't this place perfectly suitable for him? Look at how lush the vegetation is. The feng shui must be very prosperous here. I am very pleased." Mama Zhang's tightly furrowed brows gradually relaxed, and only then did she lift her eyes to look at me properly. Her expression was complex as she spoke slowly. "You are a fortunate person. Stay here quietly and don't pay attention to the gossip outside." This was a clear warning for me. The first young master, Julian, was not favored, and by extension, I, the new young mistress from the countryside, would naturally be met with cold indifference. If I fought and tried to justify myself, I would not only gain nothing but also lose face and be looked down upon. I smiled faintly, took a scented sate from my sleeve, and offered it to her, speaking softly. "I see Mama Zhang's eyes are bloodshot and your complexion is a bit sallow. You must suffer from frequent sleeplessness. This sachet contains a calming remedy I prepared myself. If you don't mind, placing it by your pillow at night will help you sleep peacefully." Mama Zhang did not accept it, but the young maidservant accompanying her quickly took it. Her expression softened somewhat, and the tension visibly lessened. Before leaving, Mama Zhang spoke softly to me again. "I often keep watch for the Marchioness at night. so I cannot carry items of unknown origin on my person. I must have this checked by a physician first. Please don't take offense." The young maidservant bowed her head, examining the sachet, and suddenly giggled. "Mother, you are usually so quiet, yet today you've spoken so much with the young mistress. It seems you two are truly fated." Mama Zhang lightly tapped her on the forehead and scolded sternly, "Xin Yu, do not be rude." I thought for a moment. Then I took a brand new silk handkerchief from my luggage and offered it to the young maid. She turned it over and over, admiring the embroidery. Clearly delighted, her small face flushed red and she mumbled, "I just find this pattern unusual. It's not like I've never seen valuable things before." Then she accepted the handkerchief, stuck out her tongue, and said with a smile, "I'll remember this kindness." Xin Yu was indeed quick to return a favor. Not long after, she brought a group of servants to help me clean the courtyard and repair the roof, saving me a great deal of effort. When everything was done, I sat resting under the magnolia tree in the yard. My nephew, Leo, brought me a pot of tea and a plate of snacks. He fanned me lightly, his expression serious. "You've been working all this time without even a sip of water. Alara Lee, you don't regret bringing me here to acknowledge our kin, do you? I told you before. I would rather study medicine with you and become a barefoot doctor than let my little auntie suffer like this. Just look at you. You've been smiling so much to please them that your face must be tired." Though the boy was young, he spoke with maturity, his eyes filled with worry. His face was the spitting image of my sister Liana, especially when he lectured me, just as she used to. I pinched his small face and said gently, "Leo Lee, it's a good thing you look like your mother. Otherwise, I would have poisoned you to death long ago." His face fell miserably, and he mumbled, "It's not like you haven't poisoned me a few times already." I gave him a light kick on the bottom. "That was tonic, not poison. Now go make dinner, I want sweet and sour pork." He looked visibly annoyed, grumbling as he walked away. "Look at this grand future you painted for me. You said when we came here, we'd have servants to bring us food and clothes. In the end, I'm still the one cooking. If you ask me, we should have just stayed in Hudu village." When he reached the small kitchen door, he poked his head back out. "Should I make stir-fried bamboo shoots too?" I warily waved my hand, signaling for him to decide. A gentle breeze brushed past, and a slightly wilted white magnolia blossom fell into my hair. There was one thing I didn't tell Mama Zhang earlier. I truly love this small courtyard, because it is filled with magnolias, my sister Liana's favorite flower. I gently stroked the blossom in my hand, a deep tenderness welling up in my heart. "Sister, I will not fail your expectations. I will raise Leoli to be a good man, to grow up safe and sound." Leoli and I lived in this secluded corner of the estate, unvisited by anyone, so our life was much quieter. At first, Leo was reluctant and unhappy, but after his first day at the clan academy, he returned with his eyes shining brightly. It seemed the rumors were true. The teachings of the great contemporary scholar were vastly different from the village tutor. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, found the sight of me vexing, so she excused me from paying my morning respects. I was all the more grateful for the chance to live my days in leisure. Every day, I busied myself within the small courtyard, planting flowers and drying medicinal herbs. When we first arrived, the courtyard was desolate. After clearing all the weeds, only a single, bare magnolia tree remained, its leaves fallen and branches dry, devoid of life. The 3 rooms were in an even more pathetic state. The main room contained only a bare bed frame covered with a cold mat. There were quilts, but they had been unused for so long they were covered in green and white mold. The study was empty, without even a proper desk, let alone bookshelves or decorations. The remaining room held a bathing tub, likely where he used to wash. Honestly, looking at those 3 rooms, I found it hard to imagine how the first young master of the Marquise's estate, Julian, had lived in such a place. And the Marchioness, Madame Zhao, acted as if I didn't even exist in the estate. The maids and servants would quickly avoid me on sight, and none would obey my orders. I had no choice but to slowly furnish and clean up the place bit by bit myself. Fortunately, the monthly allowance from the Marquise's estate wasn't bad, so I still had enough to buy things I liked. I bought 2 bolts of fabric and hand-sewed a bed curtain embroidered with 100 butterflies among flowers pattern. When Leoli helped me hang it, he exclaimed, "Heavens, this is so tacky." I admired the vibrant, spring-like floral curtain and smiled in satisfaction. What was tacky about it? It was clearly cheerful and warm, a pleasant sight. After it was hung, Leoli asked warily, "So what are you planning to hang in my room?" I just chuckled. He ran off to look and immediately fell into a silent despair. Every day I went out and gradually filled the 3 empty rooms. Next to the main bed, I added a small daybed for napping. Opening the window, I could see all the flowers I had planted, the breeze carrying their gentle fragrance. On the small table, I placed a tray of snacks and fresh fruits. Waking from a short nap to nibble on snacks and drinking a cup of clear tea was truly delightful. I also had to thank Mama Zhang. She had dug an old carpet out of the storeroom, said to be a treasure from the western regions. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, had despised its gaudy pattern and discarded it, but it ended up in my hands, spread on the floor. It was soft and warm to step on. The new bedding, aired in the sun, was soft and fragrant. I again placed calming herbs in sachets, letting the scent fill the room. At night, I hugged my pillow, enveloped in the gentle aroma, feeling strangely happy. Lioli finished helping me place the candle on its stand and said warily, "You really know how to enjoy life. You'd think this was our own home." Today at the academy, I heard that the first young master, Julian, is about to return to the estate. "What are your plans?" Drying my hair, I replied leisurely, "What first young master? Isn't that your father? It's good that he's returning, it saves me from being lonely in this empty room." Hearing this, Leo's face flushed red with anger. "I don't want you to sacrifice your life for me and my mother. When I grope, I will avenge my mother myself." At this, his eyes turned red, welling with tears. He hugged me tightly, his voice trembling. "Aunt Alara, I have never forgotten why my mother went mad. I am the son of a beast. I have his filthy blood running in my veins. One day, I will be strong enough to make him pay." I let him cry for a while before gently wiping his tears with a handkerchief. Outside, the sound of falling rain began to pitter-patter. My mood suddenly lifted, and I ordered him, "Quick, bring out the small red clay stove I bought the other day. Let's go to the veranda to brew tea while we watch the rain and the flowers." Leola's face darkened, and he scowled. "This morning, I told you the sky was overcast and it was going to rain. I told you to bring the flowers under the eaves, but you ignored me. Good thing I was quick. Otherwise, what would you be looking at now? Bare branches." I tweaked his hair, laughing. "Such a child, worrying so much. If the flowers fall, I'll plant new ones tomorrow. If I can't watch the flowers tonight, I'll watch the rain, drink tea, and play chess. What's the problem?" Leo sighed, his voice softening. "How can you always be so calm? We came here for revenge." I grabbed his cheeks and pulled them gently. "Revenge, you say? Fine, why don't you run into his courtyard right now and stab him to death? Then you'll be jailed for patricide and ruin your life. I'll follow you to prison and suffer all kinds of torture. Wouldn't that be fun?" Leoli looked at me, the anger in his eyes fading, replaced by silence. He understood. This matter could not be rushed. The Marquis's estate was heavily guarded. The outer courtyard had soldiers, and the inner courtyard was monitored by strong servants. If I hadn't used my sister Liana's identity to claim kinship, I would never have been able to set foot in here. Today, I tested the waters with that small sachet of medicine, and it showed me just how strict the rules of the Marquis's estate are. It was difficult to get past even one mama, let alone trying to make a move against the second young master Vincent. That would be like trying to pluck stars from the sky. For now, the only way is to stay in the estate and plan slowly. If there's one thing I have an abundance of, it's patience. Leo Li blushed and said softly, "It was my mistake. I was too impulsive." I patted his shoulder gently. "Nothing can be rushed. Trust me, when the time comes to act, I will discuss it with you. For now, the most important thing is to study hard. You must become so accomplished that the Marquis's estate cannot look down on you. When my identity is eventually exposed, you will be the one who can protect me." Leo Li, remembering how he had just cried in my arms, looked ashamed. He bowed his head and said quietly, "I know. You taught me not to ruin my own life because of others' mistakes. I always remember your words. Let me go get the stove for your tea." I yawned and burrowed under the covers. Tea. The rain is about to stop. You see, beautiful moments in life are fleeting. You're a moment too slow, and I've already missed the rain. I'll probably toss and turn all night in regret. Leoli was speechless with exasperation. "In your dreams. You'll sleep soundly, I'm sure." He stormed off, but paused at the door, remembered something, and came back to light a new candle for me. Before leaving, he instructed, "If the candle goes out, don't get up. Just call for me. I'll hear you." When I didn't respond, he walked back to the bed and gently patted my shoulder. I just hum half asleep. In the middle of the night, I suddenly opened my eyes. The candle had gone out. I fumbled under my pillow for a flint and relit the wick. As the light flared up, I saw a tall figure standing by the candle stand. He was the one who had blown it out. He turned back as the light hit him, his voice cool. Sleeping at night without extinguishing the candle is a fire hazard. I sat up and smiled gently. Husband, you are quite right. Julian stood by the doorway. The dim light illuminated the slender figure on the bed. Her long hair, like silk, and her gentle, serene face made him feel as if his mind was fogged by mist. All the words he had intended to say were forgotten. Hearing that soft, watery voice call out the word, husband, he remained frozen, unable to advance or retreat. He had received an urgent letter from his mother, Madame Zhao, only to learn that 7 years ago, his younger brother, Vincent Zhao, had committed a terrible, shameful act. Worried about her youngest son's future, his mother had sent the letter ordering him, Julian, to take the blame. After reading it, Julian felt not a single ripple of emotion. Since childhood, he had grown accustomed to such favoritism. He could tolerate other, smaller matters, but this ruined a woman's reputation and violated an innocent woman. He absolutely could not turn a blind eye. On the way back to the estate, he had resolved to explain everything clearly to the woman. He had even sent a letter in advance announcing his return. Yet, when he arrived at the gate, he found only Mama Zhang waiting with a lantern. Seeing his unreadable expression, Mama Zhang faltered. The Marchioness, tempered maid, Xinyu, immediately interrupted. Mother, stop lying to the first young master. The second young master, Vincent, drank too much and has a headache, so the Marchioness is personally brewing hangover soup for him, and couldn't come to greet you. Julian waved his hand, indicating no explanation was needed. When he was young, he used to dream of someone waiting for him with a lantern, of warm arms welcoming him in the dead of night, but he was long past the age for such fantasies. When he was born, his mother was merely a concubine. To curry favor with the first wife, she had given him to the first wife to raise. After the first wife died, his mother became the new official wife, and the bond between mother and son became as thin as water. He had heard Mama Zhang mention this Mistress Li, Solara, in the detached courtyard, saying she was gentle and knew how to make a life for herself. But just outside the door, Xinyu was arguing with his personal attendant, Chimo. Chimo snapped, "Have you been bribed by that Mistress Li?" The first young master, Julian, made it clear. As soon as he returned, he would send the mother and son to the second young master Vincent's courtyard and tell them straight they've got the wrong man. Xinyu sighed softly. The second young mistress, Vincent's wife, is cruel, and the second young master, Vincent, is an irresponsible philanderer. If we really send them over there, I fear they'll die a miserable death before long, and no one will even know. Julian wanted to hear no more and strode forward. As soon as he entered the courtyard, what struck his eyes was a riot of colorful flowers. Red, purple, yellow, and blue, all crammed together under the moonlight. He had never liked flowers, and this sight was simply an eyesore. This Mistress Li clearly had no restraint, planting only the most garish and ostentatious blooms. She had even brought in common forsythia from the roadside to plant against the wall, right next to purple morning glories climbing the partitions. A single glance revealed a chaotic and vulgar mess of colors. He sneered, thinking, she must have bought every color in the flower market and brought them here. There were also quite a few lanterns in the yard, 5 or 6 of them, each decorated in its own gaudy style. If he hadn't lived here for 10 years, he wouldn't have recognized the place. Seeing the light still on in the room, he assumed Mistress Li was still awake. Pushing the door open, he was immediately enveloped by a warm fragrance that made his head spin slightly. The room, once simple and bare, was now fully furnished. Julian bypassed the carved table, lifted the beaded curtain to the inner chamber, and suddenly froze. On the bed lay a young woman with a gentle face, her eyelashes casting long shadows on her cheeks. She was wrapped in a flower-embroidered quilt. She was fast asleep. Perhaps it was too hot. She stirred slightly, kicking off a corner of the quilt, revealing a pair of jade, white legs draped lightly over the edge of the bed curtains. Julian lowered his gaze, trying to calm himself. Since being poisoned at 16, this was the first time his body had reacted this way. Outside, the voices of Xinyu and Chimo still echoed. Chimo said, "See, the light is still on. The master must be kicking that woman out." Xinyu sighed. "The master is very resolute. I'm afraid the mistress won't be able to stay." Julian frowned, afraid the noise would wake the person on the bed, and instinctively blew out the candle. But the moment the flame died, another light flickered on from within the bed curtains. She had lit another lamp. The light spilled out, allowing him to see her every feature clearly: a thin, pink nightgown, the graceful curves of her body half hidden beneath the fabric. The quilt slipped down, revealing her skin under the candlelight, forcing him to immediately turn his head and pull his cloak across half his body. His throat was dry, he swallowed hard and managed to say, "Sleeping at night without extinguishing the candle is a fire hazard." He cursed himself internally. Why did he have to say something so dry? If it had been Vincent, he probably would have charmed this woman with just a few sweet words. As he thought this, he froze. On the bed, she suddenly giggled and said in a soft voice, "Husband, you are quite right." Husband. Those two words made him lose his composure for a moment. She clearly belonged to Vincent. Outside, Chimo shouted again, "Master, are you finished? This servant has found a suitable place. We can send the mother and son away tonight." I had long guessed that the first thing Julian would do upon returning was to kick us out. Any man with a shred of self-respect would be unwilling to accept his younger brother's woman as his wife. But Vincent was not dead yet, and the Marquise's estate was still stable. I absolutely could not leave. I was wearing the fragrance of the making flower, a scent known to heat a man's blood, cloud his mind, and blur the lines between reality and illusion. How many people in this world can distinguish between lust at first sight and love at first sight? As long as I could make him believe he had developed feelings for me, everything would be easy. I pretended not to hear the noise outside, draped an outer robe over my shoulders, and walked toward him, speaking softly. "Husband, you must be tired from your long journey. You should bathe and rest early." Just then, Xin Yu entered. She glanced at me and said with an apologetic tone, "Mistress, let this servant escort you." The room immediately fell silent. Outside the door, Liu Li had also been woken and was standing on the veranda, looking in. I lowered my eyes, my voice trembling. "All these years I have raised Leo alone. I truly never wanted to find his father, but I truly had no other choice." Before I finished speaking, tears streamed down like a broken string of pearls. Raising my head to look at Julian, I choked out, "Husband, there are some things I only want to say to you alone. Please, grant me some dignity and have them step outside." I knew exactly how I looked when I cried. It was a sight few men could turn away from. Julian's hand twitched, as if he meant to comfort me, but then he suppressed the urge, clenching his hand into a fist, the veins standing out. It was clear the making flower was taking effect. Just one more small act, and his resolve would surely crumble. I shot Lioli a look. He immediately rushed in, his eyes red, shouting, "Mother, let's go. I don't want this father anymore. We've survived all these years, no matter how hard it was, haven't we?" The two of us clung to each other, weeping. I deliberately turned my face so the candlelight would hit my cheek, my tears glistening. A picture of sorrow and vulnerability, yet still holding a trace of pride. I had practiced this exact crying expression in the mirror time and time again, just for this moment. Mama Zhang finally couldn't bear it any longer and hurried in to persuade him. "First young master, the mistress is not the kind of woman who scrambles for wealth and status. Furthermore, the young master Leo is exceptionally brilliant. Even the great scholar at the academy praises him as a rare talent. The Marquis, Lord Zhao, himself has even reviewed the young master's essays. For the sake of the young master's future, please let the mistress stay. This old servant will watch over her." I forced a smile and said softly, "Mama Zhang, please don't make things difficult for my husband. We were only fated for a brief encounter. My status is humble and lowly. How could I dare to aim so high? If I only knew how to cry, I would just seem common." Now was the time to retreat in order to advance. Taking one step back would make it impossible for him to turn away. I pulled Lioli, preparing to leave. As I brushed past Julian, my legs suddenly buckled and I swayed. He reacted almost instantly, catching me and pulling me tightly into his arms. Julian's voice was deep. "Summon the physician, immediately." Yet, he didn't place me on the bed, he just held me tightly, refusing to let go. I felt his rough fingers gently brush my cheek, and I was momentarily stunned. The making flower poison I cultivated, this was the first time I'd used it, and it worked this fast. Xin Yu asked cautiously, "First young master, Chimo has the carriage waiting at the side gate. Are we still sending the mistress away?" Julian replied, "When did I say I was sending her away?" I cursed him internally. "Then why were you mute as a stone just now?" He was silent for a moment, then said, "I was just thinking. If she knew the man who was intimate with her was my younger brother, Vincent. Yet now she calls me husband. Will she regret it one day? If I keep her here, and the truth is exposed, won't I be driving her to her death from anguish?" His words were beyond my expectations. His arms tightened around me, as if afraid I would dissolve into thin air. Xin Yu said softly, "This servant believes that sincerity is exchanged for sincerity. As long as the first young master, Julian, treats the mistress well, even if she learns the truth, she will not blame you." The news that the first young master had summoned a physician for me upon his return alarmed the entire Marcus's estate. I had entered the estate quietly, and few knew of me. But this uproar spread the news throughout the capital. Julian was entangled in a romantic debt. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, rushed over. I feigned sleep and listened to her argue with Julian. Madame Zhao was furious. "You know exactly what her background is. Why are you making such a fuss over her? You even summoned the imperial physician. If the truth gets out, won't it ruin your brother Vincent?" Julian replied indifferently, "Mother, you are the one who arbitrarily made her my wife. Is it not right for me to care for her? If anyone is to blame, it should be the one who dumped my brother Vincent's debt onto my head." He ignored her anger and said firmly, "From now on, she is the mistress of this courtyard. Mother, you are not to come here unless necessary. If I find out you are playing tricks to harm her, I will not tolerate it." After speaking, he gently stroked a lock of hair from my temple. I suddenly realized my poison crafting skills had truly advanced. Just a small amount of the making flower had caused this. If I increased the dose, I feared Julian would be mesmerized to the point of foolishness. Madame Zhao was silent for a moment before saying, "You still hate me for forcing you to drink that poisoned cup for your brother back then." Julian sneered, "Mother, that year Vincent injured the third prince. The noble consort refused to let it go. She set out 2 cups of wine for both of us. You knew perfectly well which cup was poisoned, and you still handed it to me. The noble consort's goal was to sow discord between us. She knew I was close to the 5th prince and wanted to cripple me, robbing him of an ally. In the end, you fell right into her trap. Perhaps you even hoped I would be crippled, so Vincent could inherit the title. I never expected to overhear such a shocking secret while pretending to be unconscious. No wonder Julian's courtyard was so remote and dilapidated. He had followed the 5th prince to the northwest when he was just a teenager." Madame Zhao, stung by the dredging up of the past, left in a rage. I felt someone tap my forehead sharply. I froze. Did he realize I was faking? The physician finished taking my pulse and looked puzzled. "The mistress's body contains numerous conflicting toxins. It is a miracle she is still alive today. Recovery will require careful nourishment." Liu Li began to wail, half crying, "Mother, my aunt has suffered so much these past years. If she weren't afraid she wouldn't live long, she never would have brought me here to find my father." I secretly pinched him. "You little brat, how dare you curse me?" Julian listened quietly, stroking my head for a long time before saying one thing. "From now on, I will take good care of your aunt." I was only pretending, but I eventually fell asleep for real. When I woke up, he was gone. Xin Yu ran in, her face beaming. "The first young master, Julian, just went and gave the second young master, Vincent, a beating. It was a real fist-to-flesh beating. It was so satisfying to watch. I was surprised. My husband, why would he suddenly go and beat the second young master?" Xin Yu blurted out, "Because he cares for you, mistress, of course." Just because he cared for me, he flew into a rage and beat Vincent. If word got out that a great general had caused discord between brothers the moment he returned, it would surely reach the emperor's ears and damage his future. I thought to myself, has this man truly never been in love? Just a small dose of the making flower's heart-stirring properties, and he's already this invested. If one day I used the illusory dream poison to make him believe we had consummated the marriage, he might just rip his own heart out and lay it before me. Realizing her slip of the tongue, Xin Yu quickly changed the subject and turned to bring me my medicine. Just then, 2 maidservants outside the door began speaking loudly. Every word about how I was unworthy of Julian. Xin Yu stormed out, not forgetting to close the door. Unfortunately, my hearing is too sharp. I heard every word clearly. "Alice, sometimes sharp hearing is its own curse. When people speak ill of you, you have no choice but to listen." Xin Yu lowered her voice to reprimand them. "The person inside is your mistress, the young mistress. Watch your tongues." One maid retorted, "Everyone knows she's just a country bumpkin who dragged a bastard child here. Who knows how she bewitched the first young master. And just for a bowl of medicine, Chimo already urged me to fetch the precious Zidane wood box with the Bao Shang pattern from the treasury, just to hold her dried fruits and sweets." Hearing this, my interest was piqued. I looked out the window and saw it was indeed an inlaid box, yellow background, red flowers, green leaves, vibrant without being flashy. A rare treasure. Xinyu said sternly, Jilan, I know you were originally arranged to be the master's concubine, but the first young master, Julian, refused. You should let go of this obsession. And you, the young master Leo, are already in the family registry. What right do you have to keep calling him a bastard? Do you have any respect for hierarchy? If I hear this again, I will report you to the head stewardess. Jilan was not to be outdone. The first young master is currently being whipped by the Marquis, Lord Zhao, in the main courtyard. The whole place is in chaos. Who has time to bother with me? Don't try to scare me. Julian, who had appeared behind them at some unknown time, his face dark, said, Xin Yu, throw her out of the estate. Jilan jumped, fell to her knees, and wept. First young master, this servant knows her mistake. My whole family has served the estate for decades. Even if we have no merit, we have toiled. Please, spare me this one time. In the inner courtyards, servants' families were bound by life and death. If one person erred, the entire family would be implicated to prevent betrayal. Julian's voice was cold. Then throw out your entire family. That way, there will be no resentment left to brew, and no one to plot against the young mistress in the future. I looked up at the white magnolia tree in the courtyard, suddenly remembering my sister Liana's words. Alara, if you keep relying on poisoned flowers to gain a man's love, what if you meet someone who is truly sincere? Won't you miss your chance? But poisoned flowers are so easy to use. They could make father turn his attention back to mother. They could make grandmother stop ignoring us sisters. They could get me a stick of candied fruit and get my sister Liana the pipa she desired. Human affection is intangible, but love guided by poisoned flowers, that I can control. Oh, sister? My only regret is that my skills were not strong enough back then. Mother died with resentment, and we sisters were left to wander the streets with no place to call home. But it's different now. The poisoned flowers I cultivate are pure enough. Leo Li, I will raise him well and give him everything he wants. And as for me, I am also living my life seriously. Sister, don't worry about us anymore. Julian entered, holding the precious box. He saw the medicine bowl was empty but said nothing. He just sat down beside me and took out a blueprint. This is the new residence the Emperor bestowed upon me. It's currently under renovation. Take a look and see if there are any changes you'd like to make. I glanced at his palm, which was wrapped in bandages, likely from blocking Lord Zhao's cane. And rightfully so. He was a renowned, great general now. He wouldn't just let his father whip him. I didn't bother looking at the blueprint. I had no intention of truly building a life with him anyway. I answered perfunctorily, it's all good. I'll listen to whatever husband decides. Inside, I was thinking, if you have no other business, please leave. I want to sleep more. As long as he didn't kick us out, that was enough. Unexpectedly, Julian removed his outer robe, wrapped his arms around me, and lay down on the small daybed. My head rested on his chest, and I could hear his heart pounding. I looked down and saw a prominent bulge beneath his robes. Wait. I didn't use the making flower today. He noticed my gaze, pulled the blanket over his waist, and said calmly, Mistress, I am also a man of hot blood. This is something you will encounter often in the future. I hope you can get used to it and be understanding. With that, he closed his eyes and gently patted my back, as if lulling a child. When a man is aroused, he often has a distinct scent, but Julian only exuded a cool, refreshing fragrance that left me restless and unable to sleep. Counting the days, my monthly cycle was due in 3 or 4 days, a time when I was always easily agitated. He stroked my hair and said softly, if mistress cannot sleep, then talk with me for a while. Talk. Talking only leads to slips of the tongue. I immediately closed my eyes and pretended to be sound asleep. I heard him chuckle, and then his large, warm hand lifted my face. There is something I must tell you truthfully. Years ago, I was poisoned, and it damaged my constitution. Although I recovered after 2 years of treating poison with poison, I am no longer able to desire things like a normal man. I thought to myself, then what is that thing pressing against me right now? He was clearly just trying to coax me, to say something pleasant. Between men and women, it always comes down to that. If I wanted to stay, I would have to pay a price. I opened my eyes, wrapped my arms around his neck, and smiled faintly. Husband, let's go to the main bed. My fingers brushed his neck as I rotated the silver bracelet on my wrist. The illusory dream, poison powder, had just been released. Julian lifted me in his arms and strode quickly to the bed. He set me down, kissed me lightly on the forehead, and looked at me intently. "There is one more thing I must tell you. After I was poisoned, my grandfather went to the Medicine King Valley and begged for a jade poison, repelling pearl." He raised his hand. Tied to his wrist with a red string was a translucent bead. Right now, that bead was slowly turning dark. My heart sank. I had heard of the reputation of the poison, repelling pearl. It changes color in the presence of toxins. The stronger the poison, the darker the color. This meant that from the very first night he approached me, he knew I was carrying the making flower poison. I blinked, feigning innocence. "That's wonderful. From now on, husbands won't have to fear being poisoned. My life's principle is clear. Even if caught red-handed, I must deny everything. As long as I'm not dead, I have a chance to turn things around." Since he didn't expose me, it meant he didn't intend to sever all ties. He unfastened the pearl and tied it to my wrist, his eyes as deep as ink. "All toxins are harmful. Mistress, you should cherish your body." I bowed my head, avoiding his gaze. "My sister Liana used to say the same thing. Alara, all poisons harm the body. Even if you have the antidote, using them too often will damage you." At the age of 7, to save my sister, I sold myself to an apothecary hall as a poison tester. Miraculously, I developed an immunity to 100 poisons. I've tested countless poisoned flowers over the years, and I'm still healthy. The price I paid was that I almost completely lost my sense of taste, and my eyesight is failing. I can see almost nothing at night without a candle. So, this body, whether it's cherished or not, it no longer matters. I thought to myself, I cannot use the illusory dream, poison on him anymore. If he truly wants to sleep with me, must I use my real body? I looked at him, considering. Actually, it wouldn't be that bad. Julian took my hand, placed a kiss on the back of it, and smiled lightly. "I know mistress is impatient, but the physician said your body is still weak and you must take tonics for a few more days. When you are healthy, your husband, will be sure to satisfy you." I couldn't take it anymore. I swung my leg to kick him, but he caught my ankle. His breathing hitched slightly. "Oh no, this man is a pervert." He bent down and kissed the top of my foot, then looked up, his voice hoarse. "Mistress, whether it is love at first sight or just desire, I only know that my body has feelings for you. I am the kind of person who, once I've made up my mind, will never let go. I hope the mistress will treat me with the same sincerity." His body has feelings for me. What a poetic way to say he's just lustful. He continued. "Although I very much want to share a blanket with you, I know you won't sleep peacefully with me here. I will sleep on the outer cot. If you need anything, just call." I forced a smile, keeping my voice gentle. "Husband, rest assured, I won't be needing anything." After he left, I curled up tightly under the quilt. I felt a warm current rising within my body, leaving me feeling damp and flustered. Perhaps I used too much making flower recently. The lingering poison hasn't dissipated, and it's making me restless. Could it be that my body is also developing feelings for Julian? Since Julian's return, my status in the Marquis's estate changed completely. Tailors bustled in and out, measuring me for clothes. Servants who were once indifferent were now respectful. Even the Prime Minister's daughter, the wife of the second young master, Vincent, sent people over with nourishing gifts and words of reconciliation, saying that as sisters-in-law, we should interact more. After receiving the gifts, Sinew quietly reminded me, "Mistress, it's best if you avoid the second young mistress for now. The two of them just had a fight. The second young master, Vincent, even raised his hand, and the second young mistress got so angry she broke his arm. Now the Marquis, Lord Zhao, and the Marchioness, Madame Zhao, are having a terrible headache over it." I was surprised. I heard the second young master, Vincent, was gentle. Why would he strike her? Sinew didn't understand either. This servant isn't sure. Although the second young master is a philanderer, he's always gentle with women. Otherwise, he never would have managed to coax the Prime Minister's daughter into marrying him. But these are their affairs, so it's best we don't speak of them. Sinew went to the storehouse to select reciprocal gifts. I was left alone in the room. I picked up a book and sat by the window, flipping through it idly, but I couldn't focus. Last night's dream kept replaying in my mind, making me restless. My fingers unconsciously touched my wrist, where the jade poison, repelling pearl still lay, its translucent light reflecting coolly on my pale skin. I smiled faintly, unsure if it was bitter or wistful. There are things that, the more unattainable they are, the more they torment a person. Fine. I decided I would sleep with Julian just once, to decisively cut off this inner demon. The moment I had the thought, I looked up and saw him leading Liu Li into the courtyard. Liu Li was cheerful, saying, "Father, Today was my first time riding a horse. It felt amazing. Julian smiled. Wait until you've mastered it, and father will give you a warhorse. The two of them were laughing and talking, looking just like a real father and son. But when Leo Lee caught my gaze, his smile vanished. He quickly pulled his hand away from Julian's, looking flustered, as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. He ran to wash his hands, then brought me a plate of pastries, stammering, I'm home late. You eat this. I'll go cook dinner now. The little boy was flustered, wasn't he? I looked at him, remembering how he was as a child. Lonely in that poor village, cursed at by the other children as a bastard, yet still stubbornly fighting back until he was exhausted. Thinking about it, perhaps having a father like Julian wasn't so bad for him. Even though the estate was full of servants, I only ever ate meals cooked by Leo Lee. Outside, Julian was drawing water to wash. It was already spring, but he was still dousing his bare torso with cold water. His muscles were solid, his physique alarmingly powerful. He didn't come into the room, just walked slowly to the window. In the light, his figure was tall, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist. Both powerful and mesmerizing. I was again reminded of last night's dream, my legs wrapped around his hips, being pressed against a wall, his breath like fire. Julian lightly touched my forehead and smiled. Mistress, the way you're looking at me, you're about to eat me alive. I placed my hand on his chest, looked deep into his eyes, and said slowly, the physician took my pulse today. He said my body has recovered. It's just, I've taken too many tonics and my blood is running hot. I need my husband to help me. His throat moved, and his fingers tightened on my wrist. Then he bent down, wrapped an arm around my waist, and lifted me straight up. We walked outside, by side, our faces calm. Of course, we couldn't do it in the room. It was broad daylight, servants were walking by, and Leo Lee could burst in at any moment. When we reached the courtyard, we ran into Xin Yu. She curtsied. Master, mistress, are you going out? Does this servant need to prepare the carriage? Julian just said quietly, no need. Xin Yu looked doubtful, glancing at the sky. It was almost time for lunch, yet they were heading out. Is it urgent? I smiled lightly. I've been recovering for so long, I feel a bit stifled. My husband is taking me for a walk in the garden. Xin Yu giggled, covering her mouth. Master and mistress are so devoted. It's just that there are many bees in the garden this spring. The servants are trying to catch them. Please be careful not to get stung. As we passed the garden, there were indeed servants chasing bees with nets. Julian paused and asked, will mistress's pets be harmed? I looked up and saw a ferocious bee struggling in a net, and replied calmly, husband jests. What pets do I have? We turned a corner. I suddenly pushed him against the wall, looked up, and smiled. If I were to keep a pet, it would definitely be a little puppy, just like my husband. My fingers dug into his shoulders as I stood on my toes and bit his lip, my voice husky. Husband, do you want to be my pet? The place Julian chose was incredibly secluded. If he hadn't led me here, I would have known there was a small hut deep in the estate's bamboo forest. The narrow wooden bed was barely wide enough for one person. The wind howled outside, but it couldn't drown out the heavy breathing. Though Julian tried to restrain himself, his arms around my waist were as strong as iron shackles. He bit my earlobe, his voice hoarse, like a wild beast. Mistress, from the first night I saw you, I have dreamed of kissing every inch of you, leaving my mark on this skin. I covered his mouth, not wanting to hear those crazy words. The thin blanket, faintly scented with a fresh fragrance, must have been prepared in advance. My head rolled off the edge of the bed, and he immediately pulled me back. Before I could think, his lips crashed down, as if trying to devour me whole. I had tested the making flower poison years ago and knew the tingling, entwined sensation well, but it was never as strong as this. Julian was even more ferocious than in my dreams. He kissed and bit and squeezed like a storm, suffocating me to the point of passing out. When he held me, he licked his lips, wanting to kiss again. I frowned, exhausted, and lightly tapped his cheek. He laughed hoarsely. Mistress, are you still not satisfied with yourself? I couldn't answer. The world was spinning, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already dark, but the hut was brightly lit. Julian had found a bathing tub from somewhere, and was lowering me into the warm water. I looked down and saw that from my ankles to my thighs, my skin was covered in pink kiss marks. He hadn't stopped while I was asleep. He slowly poured water over my hair, his voice much softer. Let me wash your hair. In the silence after intimacy. The intimacy after the act is always the most unsettling. I quickly put on my robe and said softly, husband, I want to go back. For me, sleeping together was one thing, but this tender affection afterward was unnecessary. He hugged me from behind and kissed my neck. The other day, I passed through East Street and saw an empty apothecary. It's perfect for opening a clinic. When you're free, I'll take you to see it. As for Leo, he's too smart to be wasted in the clan academy. I've already written a letter to the Luoshan Academy. If you agree, I want to enroll him there. The Luoshan Academy was renowned, a gathering place for the brightest talents in the land. He was telling me, as long as you remain the first young mistress, I will give you everything. The clinic, and your son's future. What did he want in return? My body. While I was still silent, he had already tied my sash, draped my cloak, fixed my hair, and taken my hand to lead me outside. Darkness enveloped the bamboo forest. My eyesight was so poor that it didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed. Julian held the lantern, his strong hand grasping mine, leading me step by step through the narrow paths. He said, "Mistress, I told you I am a stubborn man. Once I set my sights on someone, I will give them the best of everything I have. What I give, you can keep it if you want it, or discard it if you don't. Don't feel you have to give anything in return." He then chuckled. "Besides, didn't you grab my hair and call me a puppy earlier? A dog is loyal to its master. No repayment is needed." My face turned cold. I kicked him squarely in the shin. "Shut up." He had clearly forced me to say that when I had no strength left, and so somehow Julian and I would die living together. He was, indeed, an incredibly stubborn man. By the third time he asked me about the renovation blueprints, I was already feeling annoyed. He kept pestering me, making it impossible to read my medical texts. I finally threw the book straight at his face. Julian caught it, pulled me onto his lap, and remained as calm as ever. "If Mistress hasn't finished thinking, there's no rush. We can have the builders continue whenever you wish. It's not like I'll be sleeping on the streets." The general's estate, gifted by the emperor, couldn't remain unfinished forever. I looked at the blueprint and pointed to a few places. "Put lanterns in all the secluded areas. Leave a garden space for me to plant flowers. Make our bedroom a little larger, but make the bed smaller. Plant a magnolia tree by the window. The rest is fine." Julian didn't reply. I turned my head and saw him smiling from ear to ear. How strange. I tapped him on the face. "What are you daydreaming about?" He pressed his cheek against my palm. "You just said, our bedroom." I stopped speaking. Last night, I was strolling in the garden with Leoli when he suddenly said, "Aunt Ilara, I don't want revenge anymore." My heart turned cold. "Why? Do you feel attached to that beast, your father? Or are you afraid of losing this life of luxury if you're exposed?" Leoli grasped my hand. "It's not that. I just see that you are very happy right now. Wait until I'm older, and I will take revenge myself. If Julian finds out you harmed his brother, you two will be torn apart." He said I was happy. I couldn't deny it. Julian treated me exceptionally well. Even Shinyu said, "I never expected the first young master to be like this after marrying. Anything good he finds, he immediately shows you first. Any delicious food, he has you taste it first." When the Marchioness, Madame Zhao, sent people to try and impose house rules on me, he cursed them out and sent them away. Sometimes I would zone out, thinking, perhaps this is love. The kind of love that can be touched without the use of poisoned flowers. But how could my happiness compare to my sister Liana's revenge? From a distance, a soft buzzing sound. The honey bees were flying. Most bees fly out at dawn and return at dusk, but the swarm I raised was an exception. The flowers in my courtyard were not just for decoration. The moment the buds appeared, I dripped my specially formulated honey onto them. When they bloomed, the petals, soaked in this concoction, became the exclusive diet for my poison bees. I was just waiting for the right moment. Vincent would die at my hands. Therefore, there was no future for me and Julian. However, my life philosophy includes one key rule: enjoy things while you can. He gives me happiness, so I accept it. If the truth comes out one day and he hates me to the bone, I won't be afraid. Thinking of this, I even considered whether I should secretly poison Julian. Just in case he tried to punish me for his brother's sake, I needed a trump card of my own. While I was lost in thought, Julian bent down and kissed me. His tongue pushed a pill into my mouth, forcing me to swallow. It was slightly bitter. I became wary. "You're not trying to poison me to control me, are you?" I wasn't scared. My constitution is special. I'm not afraid of any poison. Julian pinched my cheek, half angry, half amused. "Ilara, you're truly a thief crying stop thief. This is a miracle elixir I begged for from the Medicine King Valley. Drink it, you won't die." Outside, Shinyu called us for dinner. Julian pulled me by the hand to go out. I looked at his profile, and a thought flashed through my mind. Julian, do you know everything? Because my sister's name was Liana Lee. You should be calling me Liana Lee. Leo Li enrolled in the Loshan Academy, and a single essay made him famous throughout the capital. People said he was a genius, showing such literary talent at only 7 years old. His future was immeasurable. The Marquis, Lord Zhao, who had always looked down on me, his daughter, in-law of low birth, now sent someone to invite us to a banquet in the main hall. Xin Yu was overjoyed. The second young master, Vincent, and the second young mistress are also attending. The Marquis says the whole family should reunite. Young mistress, this means you have been officially accepted by the Zhao family. She bustled about, picking out clothes and jewelry for me. Xin Yu said, Mistress, your usual wardrobe is very vibrant, but the Marquis and Marchioness prefer elegance. This servant has taken the liberty of choosing a pale pink skirt. Is that all right? I nodded. I'll leave it to you. Xin Yu smiled again. You and the first young master, Julian, are inseparable now. His clothes used to be so plain, but since you arrived, he's changed completely. Now he wears indigo, blue, and purple, anything bright and colorful. He wears it. I finished my makeup and went out to the courtyard. Julian and Leo Li were already waiting. They both looked at me and froze. Julian walked over and put his arm around my shoulder. You look just like a fairy. I'm worried you might just fly away. I replied seriously, maybe I will. Tonight, everything will be decided. Leo Li squeezed my hand tightly, as if afraid I'd really fly away. I thought to myself, this kid should just stick to reading the classics. He's not cut out for plotting. Harming people requires patience and calm. If you rush, the whole world will know. The banquet was held in the main hall. From the Marquis, Lord Zhao's amiable expression, it was clear he didn't know the truth about me and Leo Li. Only Vincent, the second young master, started in surprise the moment he saw me. I feel like I've seen you somewhere before. The moment he spoke, his wife jabbed him under the table, glaring. What nonsense are you spouting? He should find me familiar. I am 17 now. 7 years ago when he violated my sister Liana, she was the same age. We sisters look somewhat alike. I looked down at my pale pink dress. Coincidentally, Liana was wearing the same color that year. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, glanced at me twice and quickly interjected, 7 years ago, you and Julian were joined by fate, and you gave our Zhao family a brilliant grandson. From now on, we won't speak of the past. You are the official eldest daughter, in Ma of the Zhao family. Mama Zhang brought wine and told me to offer a toast. I was obedient, respectfully offering wine to Lord Zhao and Madame Zhao. Vincent kept stealing glances at me. Julian placed his hand on my knee, then kicked Vincent hard under the table. Vincent yelped in pain, nearly flipping the table. Mama Zhang hurried over to wipe the spilled wine from his robes. The Marquis, Lord Zhao, roared, "What are you two brothers trying to do? Julian, don't think that just because you're a general, I can't discipline you." Why did you suddenly hit Vincent? Vincent's arm, broken by his wife, hadn't healed. Now, taking another hit, he broke out in a cold sweat, crying and wailing without any dignity. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, was calling for a physician while scolding Julian. The hall was in chaos. Only Julian remained calm as a mountain, even leisurely picking food for me and Leo Li. Mama Zhang tried to help Vincent up. The veins on his neck bulged. He suddenly kicked her, sending her tumbling. Madame Zhao, seeing this, reflexively slapped him, scolding. "What do you think you're doing?" Unexpectedly, Vincent seemed to go completely insane. He lunged, pinning Madame Zhao to the ground, and gripped her throat, muttering, "I'll strangle you. Why did you always make Julian take the blame for me? Yes, I'm worthless. I'm bad at studying, I'm bad at martial arts. But I would rather be called a failure than have him clean up my messes all day, as if he's so high and mighty." The Marquis, Lord Zhao, yelled, "What are you standing there for? Pull this monster off her." Leo Li and I sat close together, watching every detail of his madness, not missing a single moment. We had to see him fall into hell with our own eyes. The room filled with Vincent's horrific screams. Leo Li's hand gripped mine, it was ice cold. Julian stood beside me and placed a hand on my shoulder, patting it gently. Vincent clawed at his own body. Dark bloodstains seeped through his clothes, emitting a foul, rank odor. The physician said, "The second young master, Vincent, has been stung by poison bees. The wound is necrotizing rapidly. We must apply the very same poisonous flower honey that these bees consumed to neutralize the toxin." Madame Zhao, her neck bruised purple from the strangulation, still rasped, "Then what are you standing there for? Go find the flower honey." The physician looked troubled. "Madam, This humble one is not an expert in this. We must invite the beekeeper who raised them to identify the source. He temporarily used medicine to stop the bleeding, preserving a trace of Vincent's life. Lord Zhao immediately sent men to find the expert. A foul stench rose from Vincent's body. His wife covered her nose and retreated several steps. Vincent's eyes suddenly flew open as if waking up. He glared at me and hissed, "I remember now. You're the Pipa, playing girl from the brothel in Nan'an." Lord Zhao immediately turned his sharp gaze on me. I looked bewildered. "Second brother, how did you know I was once in Nan'an?" Julian squeezed my shoulder, speaking calmly. "I think second brother has been poisoned by the bees. His mind is confused." Vincent's wife refused to let it go, snapping angrily, "First brother, don't change the subject. Let him finish." The physician saw Julian's look, understood, and immediately inserted several silver needles into Vincent's acupoints, causing him to go limp and silent. The physician then hinted, "The second young master, Vincent, was stung in a vital place. Even if he is saved, I'm afraid he will have difficulty siring children in the future." The Marchioness Madame Zhao's face turned pale. Her gaze drifted to Lioli, as if spotting a life raft. Julian's voice immediately turned grave. "Mother, some words, once spoken, cannot be taken back. I urge you to think carefully." Madame Zhao's lips trembled, but she ultimately fell silent. The Marquis, Lord Hao, frowned, studying Lioli for a long time, before suppressing his anger. "Eldest son, follow me to the study." Before he left, Julian gently stroked my cheek and whispered, "I'm here, don't be afraid." I tilted my head and smiled, not answering. The stench in the room grew heavier. The second young mistress couldn't stand it and left. Only Madame Zhao remained, watching over her son. The physician said politely, "Young mistress, young master Leo, please step outside. This humble one must remove the second young master's robes for treatment." Lioli and I walked out and sat in the courtyard pavilion. A heavy rain began to fall, scattering the garden flowers. Spring had passed, and summer arrived. The vibrant spring blossoms in the garden had scattered and finished their display. The flowers in my own courtyard must also be at their end. Lioli suddenly said, "You deceived me. You said you would let me know when you made your move. Children will be children." Still holding a grudge, I replied warily, "Didn't I tell you to water and fertilize the flowers?" He looked down, his voice heavy. "Ever since you started planting, you've been too lazy to touch them. Did you use your own body to test the poisons again?" "Yes. The flower nectar is toxic. After the bees drink it, they kill one another. The survivors evolve into poison bees dependent on the toxic honey. To understand the potency, I had to test it on myself. At first, it was just a stinging pain for a few hours. After many refinements, I finally cultivated a strain of bee that could make a person's flesh rot with a single sting. There is no such thing as reaping without sowing. Pain is the easiest thing for me to endure because I am so used to it." Lioli asked softly, "But why did the poison bees only sting him?" "When I first moved in, Xinyu whispered to me that Vincent feared the Marquis, Lord Zhao's, punishment, so he often snuck out the side gate to go drinking. She warned me to lock my door carefully, lest he harass me. I knew then that this was an opportunity. Every night he returned, I would burn a specially formulated incense on my courtyard wall. When a chronic alcoholic inhales this scent, it induces mania. I was afraid of being suspected, so I only used a very small dose. Later, when Xinyu mentioned he was becoming increasingly hot-tempered, I knew the poison was taking effect." Lioli's eyes widened in understanding. "So that sachet of medicine you gave Mama Zhang when you first arrived, that's what made him even more insane." "Correct. Mama Zhang was sleepless because her mistress, the Marchioness, was sleepless. Recently Xinyu asked for another sachet, claiming it was for Mama Zhang, but I knew it was for Madame Zhao. As soon as I entered the main hall today, I smelled that exact fragrance on her. She probably thinks Vincent attacked her because the bee sting made him delirious. When he wakes, she will be the one to bear the brunt of it." As if on cue, an old maidservant covered in blood burst out of the room, screaming frantically, "Help! Someone, save us." Normally, this courtyard is heavily guarded, but the Marquis, Lord Zhao, had dispatched everyone to find the beekeeper, so no one was left to help. Lioli and I rushed in. The physician was unconscious. The Marchioness, Madame Zhao, collapsed on the ground, her robes stained with blood. Vincent was disheveled, holding a golden needle. His flesh was ulcerated and reeked, his face as ferocious as a demon. He should have died long ago. It's a shame the physician was so skilled he managed to keep him alive. But living like this is worse than death. He stared at me and hissed, "It was you, wasn't it? Liana Li, you came to get revenge on me. You bitch, acting all chaste and virtuous. In the end, didn't I just drug you and make you submit? He lurched closer, his gaze frantic. And where is that cold little girl who was with you? She's the one who really interested me. So young, yet as beautiful as a fairy, with such a cold, adult-like demeanor. Father, you're ridiculous, selling your daughter but not her, saying she's too young, haha. Yes, absurd. To save the son of a lowly concubine, my father sold his own biological daughter. I remember that day clearly. My sister Liana received a letter from our father. She dressed up smiling, and said, "Perhaps father has repented and is coming to take us home." She never knew the wine he offered her was drugged. I looked at Vincent, my hand silently drawing a silver needle dipped in poison. Leola's hand in mine was ice cold. He was trembling. "Aunt Alara, I'm so disgusted. I have the blood of that thing running through me." I said softly, "It's fine. Once he is dead, you will have a different father. And you will be clean." Vincent was right in front of us, his face twisted with rage. "I violated you once, and I can violate you a second time. My mother will clean up the consequences for me anyway." Yes, his mother, that powerful woman who would stop at nothing, always cleaning up her son's messes. She bribed the local officials, had my sister Liana framed for theft, and had us exiled to a desolate mountain region, with no one to hear our pleas. Just as the silver needle in my hand was about to strike Vincent's neck, a strong hand gripped my wrist. It was Julian. He pulled me into his embrace, his voice deep. "Alara, don't kill him." The poison-repelling pearl on my wrist had turned completely black. This was a poison that killed instantly upon drawing blood. I felt a pang of regret. I hadn't expected him to arrive at this exact moment. I would absolutely not sit by and wait for the beekeepers to arrive, identify the bee, and save this beast. Julian said only one sentence. "Trust me, just this once." The great scandal of the estate of the Marquis of Yongan shook the entire capital. The second young master, Vincent, had nearly murdered his own mother and was subsequently crippled by poison bees, left paralyzed on his bed. Not long after, the Ministry of Justice received an anonymous report detailing how, 7 years ago, he had violated a young woman from a respectable family in Nan County. At the time, the Marquesaness, Madame Zhao, bribed local officials to frame the woman for theft, forcing her into exile. Now, the emperor despises nothing more than the nobility using their power to oppress the common people. The investigation confirmed the facts. The Marquis of Yongan, Lord Zhao, was implicated, found guilty of failing to control his household, and stripped of his title. Given that the Marchioness was severely injured, the emperor waived her prison sentence, ordering her to be confined to the estate. In the tea-houses, gossip was rampant. "You should see the pathetic state of the second young master, Vincent. His whole body is festering and stinks. It's a life worse than death. They say you can hear his terrified screams from the prison every day. I bet he'll hang himself soon enough." One person remarked, "Honestly, the second young master wasn't that bad. To end up like this over one girl, it seems a bit unfair." Another chimed in, "That's right, and who knows, maybe that girl was just a social climber." The proprietress of the tea-house heard this, swung her feather duster, and slammed it down on the table, roaring, "Get out. My establishment does not welcome beasts like you." The two men scurried away. Leolie and I, standing outside the door, both smiled at the sight. The proprietress saw me and was overjoyed, rushing out to grab my hand. "Lara." She smiled, but her eyes were red. She asked quietly, "I've heard it all. Is everything settled now?" Years ago, when my sister Liana and I were exiled to Hoodoo Village, a desolate place where we knew no one, it was Sister Fengping who took us in. She was a widow, tall and stronger than most men, with a straightforward and fierce personality. It was thanks to her that my sister Liana was able to safely give birth to Leo Lai. When I brought Leo to the capital for revenge, Sister Fengping followed us. She cried at the time, saying that if we were both killed by the people in the Marquis's estate, at least there would be someone to arrange our burials. Thankfully, we both survived. I handed her an invitation and smiled. "Sister, I'm inviting you to my wedding celebration." Sister Fengping beamed, but when she opened the invitation and saw the name, she froze, her jaw dropping. Good heavens! There must be quite a story behind this. A story. I thought for a moment, then replied softly, "Not much of one. He simply fell for my appearance." Only Leo Li, standing beside me, looked flustered. "Aunt Alara, what am I supposed to call him now? Uncle, or father?" Epilogue. In the 3rd year of their marriage, Julian still maintained his habit of waking in the middle of the night. He would look at the candle before going back to sleep, never letting the flame go out. Sometimes he remembered when he had his wife's past investigated. That secret report had shocked him to his core. At only 7 years old, she had sold herself to be a human poison tester, all while caring for a newborn Leoli and her mentally fragile, ailing sister, Liana. Every time he thought of it, he regretted the day he beat Vincent. He should have hit him harder. His wife, Elara, still loved to sleep curled up in the blankets, only to kick them off a short while later, revealing her pale legs. He looked at the faint kiss mark on her ankle and thought to himself that when she woke up, she would definitely scold him. Before they were intimate, she always warned him to be restrained, but once the bed curtains were drawn, he could never maintain his composure. He often thought his wife, Elara, was more terrifying than any of the poisons she'd ever created. Once you touched her, you were addicted forever. That night, he couldn't sleep. He decided to go to the North Market to buy her favorite suji pastries. The shop closed early in winter, and by the time she woke up near noon, they would all be gone. He dressed, headed for the door, then turned back, bending down to kiss her forehead. His kiss slid from her forehead to her lips. She instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck, sighing softly. On a normal day, she would have impatiently kicked him away. But, by his count, her monthly cycle was in 5 days, and this was always when she was most sensitive. A wicked impulse rose in Julian, and he teased her gently. He kept kissing her without going any further, until she grew impatient and angry. In her drowsy state, she gave him a sharp kick which only set his entire body on fire. He gently and thoroughly served her until she fell back into an exhausted sleep. Then, feeling refreshed, he went out to buy the pastries. When Elara woke up again, the bedding had all been changed. She sat up in bed, wrapped in the new quilt, taking a long moment to remember what had happened. Xinyu, who was always by her side, saw her wake and brought over a pre-warmed robe. But as she helped her dress, Xinyu spotted the red flower mark on her lower back and her gaze unconsciously flickered to the vanity table. Elara caught the look. No matter how thick-skinned she was, she couldn't help but blush, gritting her teeth and cursing internally, "That beast, Julian. He made me suffer this embarrassment." Xinyu pretended not to see, just quietly bringing her medicine. Years ago, Xinyu would have blushed every time she saw them being intimate. Now, even if she saw the first young master carrying the mistress out from behind the rockery in broad daylight, she wouldn't bat an eye. Elara drank her medicine and remarked offendedly, "The medicine is a bit bitter today." Xinyu froze, her eyes instantly filling with tears. "Mistress, you can taste the bitterness." Elara was stunned into silence. Just then, there was a noise at the door. Julian returned, holding the warm box of pastries. He leaned down to kiss her, smiling. "Eat them in bed. They're still hot." Elara looked at his robes and couldn't help asking, "Did you really go out wearing that vibrant green robe?" Julian looked down. For years, all his robes had been brightly colored, and she had never once complained. He suddenly realized what this meant and hugged her tightly. Xinyu spoke, choking back sobs. "Master, the mistress. She said the medicine was bitter. She has been drinking that same medicine for 3 years." The vibrant clothes everyone in the estate wore, the fact that Lioli always cooked for her personally, only Xinyu knew the truth. The mistress, Elara, could not taste any flavors, nor could she distinguish colors. And yet, today, she tasted bitterness and she even complained that his robes were too green. Elara had never been an overly sentimental person, but seeing both Julian and Xinyu with tear-filled, red eyes, she felt a sting in her own nose. She smiled gently and whispered, "Everything is going to get better now, isn't it?" Julian kissed her hand, his voice full of emotion. "Yes, it definitely will. True love is not about finding a perfect person, but about being seen for who you truly are." Julian saw Elara's hidden poisons and her deep-seated plans for revenge. Instead of exposing her, he chose to protect her and love her flaws. This profound acceptance gave her something she never planned for: a future. It shows that true connection can heal even the deepest wounds, turning a life of calculated survival into one of genuine happiness and recovery. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.